Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming out. Ellarku namaskaram. I'm very honored to be here on this TEDx platform hosted by CCET. Without further ado, I'd like to start with my talk. This is my journey from silence to song and how I overcame fear. I'd like to start with a confession. I was a singer who used to be terrified of singing in front of others. Not shy, not nervous, terrified. The kind of terrified that makes your hands shake, your mouth goes dry, when your knees go weak. It's very ironic, isn't it? Choosing an art like music that is meant to be heard when you're afraid of being heard. Fear has a very interesting way of shaping our lives. Sometimes it stops us, but sometimes if we just stay with it long enough, it transforms us. My journey from silence to song was not a sudden breakthrough. It was slow, messy, and deeply meaningful. Like some of you, I grew up loving music, and being born into a musical family, I was surrounded by it 24/7. And with that came a perception that I was naturally good at it. Whereas, in fact, I sang only when I was alone, when I was small. In my bedroom, in the washroom, enacting, like I was in a concert while I was showering. When I was alone, my voice felt free. But the moment someone asked me to sing a song, everything changed. My heart started racing, my mouth went dry, and the song that lived so comfortably within me disappeared. Many of you assume that performers are naturally confident, whereas in fact, some of us start at the other end of the spectrum. We don't start with confidence, we begin with love for the art. And that love is bigger than our fear. Fear is not the enemy. Over time, I realized that fear is not a stop sign, it's information. It tells us that something matters. If music did not matter enough to me, if singing did not mean something to me, I wouldn't have been afraid. Fear shows us that we care, and fear was something just at the doorway leading to something important. When people hear stories of overcoming fear or gaining confidence, people often assume it to being quite dramatic, like a movie scene where the music builds and there's a dramatic scene, the light turns on, and boom, confidence appears. But real life rarely works that way. I lived with this fear of singing in public until I went to college, when I was till I was 18 years old. I did my college in Chennai, Madras System College. And as some of you would know, being a part of college is your seniors asking you to do things that you're uncomfortable with in the name of ragging or hazing. So naturally, when my seniors got to know that I was a singer's son, the first thing that they asked me to do was sing a song. The fear crept back in, same fear that was living with me till then. But my fear of being punished by those seniors was much higher, that I had to push through this one. So I sang, and something happened. I finished singing, there was silence in the room. They got up, came to me, patted me on my shoulders, said I sang well, and left. It wasn't all that dramatic, but something changed in me. I realized that I pushed through this fear of mine, and I was rewarded with a compliment at the end of it. But this didn't mean that the fear that I had just vanished, of singing in public vanished. In fact, it only became worse when I started singing professionally. My transformation as a singer did not happen on one stage. It happened in hundreds of tiny little moments. Singing to one friend, singing to two friends, singing to strangers in a small room, then a bigger room, over and over and over again. Progress was very slow and boring, but boring progress was powerful. Let me tell you about this performance. This was back in the early 2010s, the first time I felt like I truly failed as a performer. This was the first time that I was being paid to go in front of an audience and sing. The venue was Tagore Theatre in Trivandrum. I don't know if you've been there. It was quite a small venue. I went on stage to sing this song that I'd probably sung 100 times in my bedroom, And at least in 5 or 10 competitive stages in college, it was this beautiful song you might have heard. "நிலா காய்கிறது, நேரம் தேய்கிறது, யாரும் ரசிக்கவில்லையே." I knew this song by heart. In fact, I've won competitions singing this song. It shouldn't have troubled me so much. But I went on stage to sing this song, and there were hardly 200, 300 people in the audience. But to me, they felt like 200,000, 300,000 people ready to pounce on me. I was so nervous that my heart started pounding so loudly that I thought the microphone would pick it up. And, uh, and I turned back, and it's no longer my friends playing the guitar. It's a paid orchestra. That's their job to play the instruments. And I'm performing to this audience who I've never met before and whom I probably might never meet again. That was quite intimidating. And I started singing because I had to. And there's a line that goes, "காற்று வீசுவேயில் காயும் காயும் அதில் மாற்றம் ஏதுமில்லையே ஆவானும் மண்ணும் நம்மை." And my voice cracked. Not beautifully, not emotionally, just very awkwardly. To a point where I couldn't finish the line. I just stopped singing. I wanted the ground to open and just swallow me. It was one of those instances where you feel 5 minutes have passed, but barely 5 seconds have. But something unexpected happened. The audience did not judge. They didn't laugh. They didn't boo. The orchestra continued playing. And I picked up the song back at "அதோ போகின்றது கானல் மேகம் மழையில் காணவில்லையே." And I finished the song. Not perfectly, but honestly. That day I had a very powerful realization that the audience is not waiting for you to fail. Most of the time, they're just rooting for you. Take me, for example, right now it's because I'm a singer that I've been invited here to speak in front of all of you. But public speaking is not something I'm comfortable with. It's not something that I've gained confidence in. The same fear has crept back into me, just in a different way. But I know that all of you who have showed up to see me or to listen to what I have to say, whether I say it effectively or not, none of you are here wanting me to fail. And that thought is very reassuring. Often do we say that confidence is found, like it's something that lies dormant within us and we just have to find it. But I say confidence is built. It's like a muscle. Those who go to the gym know. How do you build a muscle? You take resistance. You repeatedly give it strain. The muscle that you want to build, you give it strain, which in fact tears certain fibers of that muscle, and it's a process of rebuilding it that makes the muscle stronger and bigger. Confidence is the same thing. Every time you face fear, fibers in your thought process gets torn apart. And it's the process of rebuilding it that makes your confidence bigger and stronger. Every time you face fear, your confidence builds. And every time you avoid fear, it weakens, just like the muscle weakens. My confidence as a performer did not come from being fearless. It came from being afraid while singing, again and again and again. Over the years, something beautiful happened. The fear did not completely disappear, it transformed. Panic became energy. The thought that said, "What if I fail?" became, "This moment matters." Even today, before I perform, I feel very nervous. I have the same symptoms: weak knees, my mouth goes dry. I'm nervous right now. But now I recognize that feeling. It's my body preparing me for something meaningful. It's the same racing heart, it's the same adrenaline, but just a different thought and story in my head. This journey for me was never about singing, it was about something deeper. It was learning to show up even when the voice was shaken. Because fear is everywhere in life. It's not only on stage when I sing, it's every time we share an idea, when we start something new, when we just want to express ourselves and be true to the world. Many dreams die quietly because fear convinces us to stay silent. The world doesn't need perfect voices, it needs honest ones. I'd like to ask you all a question. What is your stage? Might not be music or arts. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's just speaking up. Maybe it's creating something that you've been hiding for years. And maybe there's a voice in your head that keeps saying, don't do it, you're not ready, people are going to judge you. I know that voice. I've lived with that voice. This is what I've discovered. You don't silence that voice by waiting, you silence that voice by acting. Courage doesn't have to be big and dramatic. Often, courage is very small, singing one song, sharing one idea, taking one step, and another, and another. And over time, these small acts of courage that you do, they create a life that fear once tried to prevent. There was a moment later in life for me after my first initial fearful performances that I walked onto the stage, the lights came on, there were hundreds of audience yet again waiting for me to start singing. But I realized something. I wasn't thinking about my fear of singing anymore. I was thinking about the song. The fear was a part of me by that point. I was thinking more about the song, making a connection about the story of the song. And I had a beautiful insight. My goal was never to eliminate fear. It was all about making the music bigger than my fear. Every one of us starts somewhere, sometimes in silence, sometimes in doubt, sometimes with a trembling voice. But if we just keep up with the process, if we just keep showing up, silence slowly becomes sound. Fear slowly becomes courage, and hesitation slowly becomes expression. My journey as a singer was never about becoming fearless. It was about learning that passion and fear can always coexist. And when your passion is stronger, the song always wins. So if there's something inside you that you've always wanted to express, a song, an idea, a dream, a truth, don't wait until you feel fearless. Start while you're afraid. Because sometimes some of the most beautiful voices in the world are the ones that almost stayed silent. This was my journey from silence to song. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you were entertained by my talk. Thank you so much for having me here.